Hello and welcome to the All Rounder Performance Podcast with myself, Damien Schechter. It's a real pleasure to have you sitting in on another episode. I've got a very good friend of mine, Zach, joining me today, and I think I'll actually hand over to Zach to introduce himself and give a little bit of background as to who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, of course, thanks for having me. Really cool to make the connection, and obviously our relationship is a product of just the magical space here in Bali. Like minds tend to be attracted to this area, and everyone also holds this like really good open energy, willing to share their journey, whether it's actually sharing their platform or just the cool stuff that they're working on. But as for myself, like Damien said, my name is Zach, and I run the Vitruvian Program as well as the Vitruvian Podcast. And the Vitruvian Program is a 12-week self-mastery program for men to become the most confident, fit, high-performing versions of themselves, with a kind of aspect of personal branding as well. You can visit thevitruvian.co if you're curious about the specific stuff, but I'm not here to sell anything. Just here to share the space with Damien today. But I've been obsessed with the world of self-mastery for a long, long time, probably since I was like 13, and have just been pursuing it for myself. And in the last year and a half, have been able to transition from kind of a consumer to a creator, putting myself out there with a podcast, and really just entering the arena, as I like to say, in my world. But yeah, these conversations are a product of putting myself out there, putting that best foot forward, and that'll be, something I encourage, and I'm sure it'll come up in this conversation, just like stepping out and putting yourself out there. But that's a general intro to myself.
Yeah. Generally, when I have a guest on the podcast, I like do a little bit of background check, like do a little bit of like checking your website out, and bro, you got some pretty like impressive testimonials, bro. Tell me a little bit about the work that you do in terms of like who you work with. What is from a self-development, discipline, and mastery perspective. Is this more on a like training and nutrition side of things? Is this more on, let's say, mindset, motivation? Where would you place kind of like the golden standard almost of your business?
It's a good question. And, the last year and a half, as I've been building, adjusting, going back to the drawing board, pivoting, it's been a question that I've had to answer for myself. I guess the best place to start is kind of the story of the Vitruvian. So the company and the program takes its namesake from that famous Leonardo da Vinci sketch with the man in the circle and the square. And I was always obsessed with kind of Renaissance art, the great Greek kind of characters, these like masculine archetypes. Specifically, Leonardo captured my attention because he was a polymath, and so not only was he this fine artist, but also an inventor, an anatomist, a botanist, and he didn't really silo himself. He explored all of those aspects. So kind of consummate definition of a Renaissance man. So I pulled that name from his sketch and built out the program that has kind of three through lines that I call your three Vitruvian identities, and that is your philosopher, warrior, and artist. So at the center of self-mastery, and it's very central to your world, is the physical body. Like it is the base of the pyramid.
Sure.
That without your physical health, everything else crumbles. So it's super core and intrinsic to building out the program, whether it's your physical systems, routine, discipline, kind of the very visceral world. But I also think that as men, we have the ability to be a lot. And so that ability calls forth the duty to do so. So the second through line, or the second Vitruvian identity, is philosopher. And so this, across the 12 weeks, you're kind of exploring your philosophy of self, kind of examining limiting beliefs, plugging in useful mental models, observing even where those beliefs may have come from. And it's kind of just a lot of like deep internal work and self-awareness. And then that third section, artist, is probably the most unique. And you'll see like copy on the website talking about your Achilles advantage. So in that artist section across the 12 weeks, you're building what I call your Da Vinci blueprint, which is a map that should lead you to your Achilles advantage, your position of unique and unfair leverage in this world. Stated very simply, it's your gift to give the world. The one thing you could give somebody, it's one of the closer questions of my podcast, like what is your unique gift to give the world? I believe everyone has that. It's the alchemy and amalgamation of all of your backgrounds, traumas, strengths, weaknesses, interests, passions, all of those things. And you're kind of examining and exploring that through various exercises throughout the 12 weeks so that by the end, whether you're building a personal brand or you're just a father or a student or somebody in kind of a more traditional space, as a man, like having that statement, that mission statement, like this is what I'm here to do. I think it's extremely empowering, and then it also lets you spend the rest of your life giving that gift.
Sure. Did you start things on a more physical like level when it comes to like, let's say, just something on a surface level of training and nutrition, or was it, you know, kind of all brought together in like the same package at once?
Yeah, it's been holistic in the development of the program since the beginning, kind of always having those two lines. But like my personal journey very much did start with the physical.
Yeah.
You know, I was just an insecure, chubby little kid and playing team sports. Always was like pretty athletic, could hang in the sports themselves. But, you know, I was always afraid to take my shirt off in the locker room. I didn't have abs and I didn't look like the athlete I was. So, you know, my journey, my self-mastery journey really was just starting with like YouTube, like how to get abs, all the six-pack shortcuts, like the OG stuff way back in the day. But, you know, training goes to nutrition because that, okay, cool, the stuff I eat can change me. Well, what's actually going on behind that? Like physiology, neurochemistry, all that stuff. And then once you kind of, I feel like, get a good base for the physical world, then it's like, all right, how do I use my mind to really help me augment that world?
Yeah.
And so it really was just a broad unfolding for the next decade after that.
Right.
And yeah, it's just something I'm extremely passionate about.
I think that's something that a lot of people that get into self-development, self-mastery, like everyone generally starts off on like the training side of things, you know. And I know that like from personal experience at least, like I've trained for 15 years. I've done PT and online work for 10 years. But only in the past year have I actually started to really like kind of take a step back from that and say, well, what's my motivation behind doing a lot of this? Like where do I feel like I've actually fallen short, which has been my motivation to go and train. And I kind of realized at the beginning of this year that training was a bit more of an escape, more than it was actually something that was purely passion driven. A lot of people throw around, oh, I'm passionate about training. You know, sure, I'm highly passionate about spending, you know, a good 2 hours a day in the gym, but am I, or is it actually me just, you know, trying to distract and escape from like maybe a really deep rooted insecurity? And, you know, I recorded a podcast 2 days ago in here, and I spoke about my story. And, you know, it was actually the first time that I've sat down and like really reflected on before the training, before I went into the gym, what was my childhood like? And one of the things that actually stood out was me being bullied in school about me being I don't want to say like feminine, but hanging around a lot of women. You know, doing things that most of the other guys weren't doing. I wasn't playing team soccer. I wasn't playing rugby. I wasn't like, you know, hanging out with the guys. I was collecting stickers with the girls. And, you know, then at the same time, obviously being underweight, then there was a lot of, you know, negative or just unnecessary comments from kids that were older than me. And, you know, at the time, you just take it as it is what it is. It's a part of like growing up and it's a part of like the school experience. But then I kind of like went into the part of the story where I realized while I was telling the story, holy shit, wait, actually, that's why I started training. I sat with my dad one evening and I said, Dad, I want to get bigger. I want to get a little bit stronger. I want to be a little bit more in control, you know. And, you know, when I look at that, what was the reason why I wanted to do that is because of, you know, my past experiences. So it really made me realize, like, actually, are you running away from something or are you running towards something? Is this something that you experience quite a bit with your clients?
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. And I think case by case, every person is like very unique. I suppose I can speak at most depth to my story. And certainly in retrospect, like I think you get your head above water with everything and bring that heightened self-awareness and you're like, oh, that's where it came from.
Yeah.
Because for me, I've kind of like reflected a lot, and the thing that I clung to for a long, long time until the physique caught up to match, or I built that kind of harder armor of my body, I clung to my intellect. So like I was like a real know-it-all kid. I like loved to be top of the class, like debate with teachers, get the best grades, and I've always been on that like high achiever end of the spectrum, like leader of the groups that I was in, like joining team captain, that kind of thing. But like why, when I try to piece together, like what was I seeking to fill the entire time? Like where is that motivation? Because I think forward cast, I want to be a father. So as far as it was very effective and allowed me to live an amazing life thus far, I want to be able to engender that. But hopefully with that positive fuel that's pulling them forward rather than some sort of negative. And I think what I've distilled it down to is that I really just didn't feel like seen or heard by my father. we have an ongoing relationship. We're working through it, and I love him to death, and he always acted out of love, so I don't hold anything against them. They did the best that was demonstrated to them. But it was like he was very much the traditional, like, go out and work. He was out before I typically woke up, got back for dinner, so I saw him like an hour a day for most of my like childhood especially. And so it just wasn't enough, at least in my like childhood mind, to get the attention. Like I kept coming home with, new grades and whatever, and it was always like I felt like it was easy to get the acclaim for that. And so I think I really dove into the fitness because I was like, somebody will pay attention when I'm X. Like when I'm finally an athlete and I feel like I worked towards it versus like I just was smart. I wanted to work towards something so that someone could finally be like, you're enough.
External validation.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that a lot of people, look at, especially when it comes to health and fitness. It's something that I did for a long time. Like I did bodybuilding for 5 years. And looking back at that now, that's all external validation. Like you're also being judged subjectively by someone else to determine whether you're the winner or not. And one of the things I pulled back on now was actually just enjoy the training. Train hard, but train at the intensity that you enjoy. Instead of there's a show coming up, I need to be dialed in, I need to put this pressure and stress on myself, because that was just not healthy. And I think only once you step out of an environment like that do you realize how toxic it is. When you're in the environment, and this can go for like many different sports, but like I think when you're surrounded by so many people that are working towards one thing, it's really great from a community perspective. But if let's say the underlying value of that is actually just not internal, but it's more external, then you set yourself up for failure. And I think when I stopped bodybuilding, that's when I realized, holy shit, like I've actually been doing this all wrong. Like, what do I have left now? Because I've been chasing this external sense of like people clapping, there's nothing better than standing on a stage, winning a show, and everyone stands up and claps for you. But the second a lot of that gets taken away, all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, like, what am I doing this for?
Right.
And like, what was I doing that for? And that obviously led to a lot of, I think looking at other ways of getting validation, whether this is like socially, so now you have to be the life of the party, or you need to show up in maybe situations that like you probably wouldn't have shown up in, but now you're just not getting validation from this source. You haven't sat with yourself in the interim at all. You haven't done any of the deep emotional or spiritual work, so just jump from one external thing to another. And that led me to obviously a good few years of partying and, really, I think, doing the complete opposite of embodying the health and fitness profile that I was projecting to other people. I was still holding down 15 clients a day, teaching classes, had really good relationships with fitness brands and clothing brands and etc. But, on the inside, like I still had not done any of that work, whatsoever to address kind of what was I, really kind of running away from still. What are I think one of the things I want to find out from you with the guys that you work with is, what is the major, you obviously work with males predominantly or only? Only. So what do you find is maybe the one thing that males struggle with the most when it comes to where they're at, unhappy with themselves, haven't spent enough time, effort, or energy on the things that really matter? What would you say is like the biggest gap that one needs to kind of cross to essentially like level up?
Yeah, and I actually do think it can apply for men and women, because I know that you work with a lot of women. So like for any women in the audience, like I believe that this can 100% apply as well. These kind of more universal principalities, but I genuinely think like because no one's teaching us, or it's very, very rarely demonstrated to us, the kind of relationship with yourself is a relationship that either gets put on the back burner or never really gets addressed. So kind of a main tenet of my program is I have a lot of the worksheets that I have the guys work through is like prompted questions and exercises for them to journal, but it's not like a worksheet that they fill out online. Like they have to sit down and handwrite. So it slows you down and you have to take that time to literally spend with yourself. And over the course of the 12 weeks and beyond, you start to develop a relationship with yourself. Like when we look at how relationships are formed in the world, like the number one common ingredient is simply time spent together. It's why people in traditional 9 to 5s, like extremely high percentage of them marry within the workplace, or you marry within colleges, because you're just spending these hyper condensed periods of time, like all day with everyone. And that's just how humans are, right? We build trust and rapport by spending time. But if you look back across your own life, like how many times have you just been completely alone with you? How much time have you asked yourself questions to get to know yourself? Pretty quickly, like once you are past like developmental age and you can talk, they put you in a classroom, they put you in after school activities, and you're having to like externally socialize. And then a lot of people, like for the rest of their life, don't go 2, 3, 4 hours consecutively without being with someone. They can't sit at a meal and eat alone. They can't not have some sort of input. And now that we have technology, it's like even if you're alone, if there's a podcast playing in your ear or you're scrolling reels while you're eating, like you just aren't quiet. So I think that like finding that inner guide, like getting to know yourself,
Sure.
is the missing ingredient, because so much stuff comes through in that silence, in that space. It's just as if like if I was trying to get to know you, if I speak at you the whole time, I'll never learn anything about you. I have to hold space and be quiet so that you can step into that space and share yourself. But it's a shift that I think people have to make, understanding that the relationship with themselves is like any other. It takes time, it takes intention, you have to hold space for yourself, and then also be forgiving, like have the internal dialogue as if you were speaking to someone else. Like if you, that's why journaling is helpful, because we really don't know what's going on up here until we freeze it on a page, and then you're like, is that how I talk to myself? Is that really what I think about myself? Because I wouldn't say that to you. Like if I talk to Damien about how I talk in here, is Damien my friend anymore? Maybe, maybe not. So that's that, like fostering that internal dialogue through some sort of like practical medium versus just like general advice, like love yourself, be forgiving to yourself. Those are great mantras to return to, but as far as like X's and O's, I think just taking time in solitude, man or woman, especially for men, like we become very, very strong in bouts of silence and solitude so that we can return a more holistic version of ourselves to the people that matter.
Yeah. The journaling's changed my life completely. Like having that half an hour in the morning, or like, it doesn't even have to be in the morning. It's a fundamental of my daily routine, like brushing my teeth. Like giving myself just that space. And the thing is, sometimes I open up a journal and I've got no idea what I'm going to write. The first journal I had was the Mind Journal, if you've heard of it. So basically the first page, and if anyone's listening to this, like really Mind Journal is a great way to start your journaling, because most people think I'm going to go get an empty book and I'm just going to start writing. But there's no prompts for that, right? So the nice thing about Mind Journal, it says there's a whole bunch of boxes, anxious, happy, sad, irritated, and it says how are you feeling today. So immediately you just have to take the guesswork out of that, and you can actually just, at face value, just say how you're feeling. Then it's what are you grateful for? You know, what are the things that you're going to do today that are going to make you happy? So, you know, if you want to start journaling, most people know that this is a really great way to actually kind of like start that process of self-development. That's how it started for me, at least. And so the Mind Journal is a really great way for you to actually start initiating that, because it's prompted. The one page is obviously asking, how you doing? How you feeling? What are you grateful for? But the second half of the daily journal would actually be a certain topic. So how do you feel about money? You know, who is your biggest role model? What are the relationships that you have with your parents? You know, so it just takes a little bit step further in terms of you, I think, understanding yourself a little bit better. Because when you actually ever take the half an hour to think about your relationship with money, or to think about who's your biggest role model, or to, you know, actually write down on paper, what are you truly grateful for? And the second I started journaling, it improved my relationship with all of these things, because I hadn't actually ever really thought about, whoa, I've got like a really bad spending habit, or like, whoa, I'm really reckless with money. So then I started actually looking at what I was spending my money on, which improved my relationship immensely. Now I've obviously moved into go get an empty book and just write what's in your head. You know, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts? You know, are you having a good day, a bad day? Sometimes I open it up and I'm like, I'm having a really good breakfast today at this restaurant. Then I'll start talking about what I'm thinking. So journaling has really been, like, I think probably hands down one of the greatest measures I could have taken to getting I think, a little bit more introspective with like what's going on in here, because there's a lot going on in here. There's a lot going on in the head. It's a human thing, right? We all deal with it.
Yeah, and it brings to mind like one of my favorite philosophers, psychologists is Carl Jung. He has this quote that until you make the unconscious conscious, you will continue to suffer, something to that effect. And it's so true. And it's exactly what we're trying to do with journaling practices, with mindfulness, with any of these prompts, is just to bring what's kind of running the subconscious, like what is your underlying programming that you have no awareness of, bring it to the face and like observe it. It's like, holy, like we need to do some addressing here, like that clearly like a scarce money relationship. Wow, I've actually been seeking validation through women in like a strange way and not healthfully pursuing a partner. I haven't talked to my parents in a long time. That's crazy. Like maybe I should give them a call. And just these types of things that you bring from that unconscious to the conscious so that you can address it. Ultimately, the unconscious mind has like levels and levels and levels. So it's a very complicated and lifelong endeavor, but these are great modalities. And then I also think that with journaling, one thing that I say in my program is that it is a technology for helping, but as I've adjusted my journaling practice over time, you should only use it for which you feel it valuable. So if you're like, okay, cool, Zach and Damien are talking about journaling, buy myself a book, whether it's the Mind Journal or otherwise, I'm going to do it every single day. And then if it starts to feel like a task or you're dragging yourself to it and you're really not getting anything out of it, it's just mental masturbation if you continue.
Yeah.
Like find where that blend is for you. I tried daily for a while and it just eventually got to the place where I'd basically be recounting my day. There's value in that, but I felt like I was just rewriting my calendar either before I went to bed or before the day started. So what I've come to now is a week in review. So Sunday morning, I'll take like a more extended period of time, maybe an hour, and just sit with myself. Like, how did I feel this week? How did I feel about what I was doing? Where's my mental state? Things like that.
Yeah.
And it helps me. There's enough to happen in a week that like I can do like a proper review for like checking in with me, but it's not like really, really granular. Like, okay, today I had sushi for dinner and at lunch I trained
Yeah.
arms and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So that's just one like caveat to throw in there is use it if you find it helpful,
Yeah.
but it is not the only tool. And what works for you is different than me, is different than the next, the next, the next.
And I think it also puts a bit of stress on someone when they feel like they need to do it every single day. That was something that the Mind Journal was really great to start off on because it got me into a routine of doing it.
Yep.
But once I was in the routine and I actually had gotten a fair amount of self-control through doing something like that, I then started to do it once every 2 days. Or if I felt like doing it once every 3 days or 4 days. Now I'm so intuitive with, I know when I need to get something out. I know when there's been something that's bothering me for a while that like, actually, you know what, I need to just take half an hour this afternoon or an hour to just really like, whatever is going on, I need to write it down. But, you need to just, I think, start developing that habit. Get that amount of control that then you actually understand when you need to put something on paper. You don't always need to put something on paper. You don't need to wake up and have these elaborate morning routines. I think having routines are absolutely brilliant, especially when they are conducive towards better health, better mental health. But, the second it becomes a little bit of a stress and the second that you think, oh, now I need to put that half an hour in when actually I've got this to do and I've got that to do and this is also what I want to try and fit in my day. The second it becomes a stress, like, is it actually doing you more harm than good?
I agree. And I think it's same can be applied to like many different verticals, including fitness. Like the point of any of it is so that you can serve your life. And humans, like our number one trait of the physical system is that we're super adaptable and resilient. So the point of us getting in great shape, besides just looking good naked and all the vain things, it's like, okay, I have my weightlifting routine and I could get like the most optimized results if every day I train at the same time, got my pre-workout carbohydrates, post-workout training, all that. But if my friend says, hey, tomorrow, do you want to go run a 10K? Or do you want to go hike? Or do you want to go do a 5-hour surf session or whatever? If I can just say yes to that and then my body says yes back because of all the like bricks that I've stacked, that's the point of it all. Like it's supposed to be in service of life, not some part of life that you have to bucket and stratify. And that's definitely been a relationship that I've had to kind of like get to the place where I can speak like that, because there's been periods where it's like, no, bro, that's my gym time. Like, that's when I'm going to go, or I got to hit my meals or whatever it may be, or I can't come out for dinner because, I've got to hit my macros, et cetera, et cetera. And, goals aside, like there are specific bouts where that stuff is important. But I think across a lifespan, the point is to augment rather than pull away from.
Yeah, this idea of like do or die, right? Like you have to do 5 days of training a week. You have to have X amount of food, with every single meal. And like, look, it's my job. I obviously, I'm not trying to set a bad example here and say to clients, well, feel free to just do what you want when you want. There needs to be structure. There definitely needs to be routine. But, I think only once you've developed a certain structure and routine do you understand yourself enough to know when you can actually just relinquish a little bit of control, and you can actually, like, maybe every 2-3 days, if you do want to go out for dinner, go for it. But if you're in a place where, let's say from a body composition perspective, you're in really poor health, there needs to be more structure, there needs to be more routine. But I think once you've gone through that journey and you've found what works for you, yeah, you need to break it up a bit. Like, if, as you said, if someone says, let's go for a 10K run, I'm down for that right now. Like, I'm always down for that. I'm always down for going for a hike or taking the day out on the scooters, going up north and just experiencing things and trying a local food. I think it is really important to just, have a little bit of freedom. But, that it can only be achieved through once you've done a lot of hard work. Most people want the easy way out. Most people want to have this, like, sense of freedom from the get-go without any structure, without any diligence to actually bettering themselves. They think that just having complete freedom and control is like kind of the gold standard, but I think there does at least need to be a little bit of structure in place with that.
I completely agree. Just like you earn your way to certain movement patterns, like complex movements like a barbell squat, you got to earn your right to be meal flexible or even intuit how your body is feeling. And same thing with journaling, actually. Like you said now, like you're very intuitive, when do I need to journal? But like knowing even what intuition is, that's like one of these bucket, like trust your intuition.
Yeah.
It's just up in the air. But until you have spent enough time with yourself to know and discern the voice in your head from intuition and your higher guide to just your base desires, because the intuition of a drug addict is to go back to the drugs. That person should not be taking the advice to just trust yourself, right? They have to break out of these habits. And if you're addicted to food, you're addicted to pornography, you're addicted to sex, if you listen to the intuition at the moment, it may be telling you to return to vice. So for training, if you don't know what you're doing, if you're eating and you can't tell me roughly how many calories are on the plate or how many calories you've eaten on the day or on the week, like did you have a high day or a low day yesterday? What is a day that's at maintenance for you?
Yeah.
If you haven't done the math for a long enough period of time to like be able to be intuitive, you have to take the steps to get there. And it's okay. It really doesn't have to be a lifelong thing. I talk in my program, like I teach how to count macros and all these things. And I encourage across the 12 weeks that you do track so that you can learn, so that after 12, or maybe it's longer for certain people, you just don't have to track for the rest of your life. Because I don't think that we should be viewing food as numbers. That's, at least for myself, it led down a very dark route with a little bit of like eating disorder stuff, which we can absolutely go into.
Yeah.
But you do have to learn. And like I only now can be intuitive with food and intuitive with lifestyle and training and all these things because of those bricks that were stacked and the missteps and the learnings and all the things along the path.
Yeah. I think tracking your food, we'll definitely go into that, because we spoke about this over dinner briefly the other night. It's creating an awareness of what's in front of you. So I tracked my food for I'd say about 3 years, 4 years. And it gave me the awareness of what I was looking at. So now I can tell you that there's 125 calories in 60 grams of avocado. I know what 60 grams of avocado looks like when it's on my plate. Do I want to be playing the numbers game? No. But am I playing a numbers game when it comes to my maintenance, or if it comes to what my goal is? Now, if the goal is to drop a bit of body fat, I need to be in a deficit. I need to know what I'm looking at. So now I have that awareness of having tracked. But do I want to track every single day? Definitely not. Do I think any clients of mine want to track for the rest of their lives? No. I've got like some clients that are 50, 3 kids, running a business, and also want to go and enjoy life, But had they not been given that tool as a bit of an educational tool for them to use on their day-to-day life, they'd probably still be exactly where they were, before we started. something that you mentioned that I've also picked up with a lot of clients of mine is that it leads to certain poor relationships with food. Can you maybe give me a little bit of context from your personal story as to what the correlation with tracking was with, let's say, a poor relationship with food?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I tell my story, I do want to bring to light the comment that you make, which I think is super important, is that it is not the act of tracking itself. That is just an objective choice you're
Yeah.
making. It is the underlying person who's making the decisions and like the honestly relationship with yourself. So I still had a lot of unhealed self-love issues, which led me to where I will go into. So yeah, I think like my journey started out, like I said, how to get abs on YouTube. And then you hear this term calorie deficit. You're like, okay, what's that about? You learn a little bit of simple maths. You're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Track for a little bit, figure out where my maintenance is based on my weight fluctuations. Cool. Like I said, I was a smart kid, so it's like the numbers were great for me. My Fitness Pal kicks out a graph. Like, okay, sick. Now we're off and running. So a lot of like my early stages were aggressive attempts at changing my body composition, and it was effective. Like when I was in a pretty steep deficit, keeping my movement high, training really really hard, I lost weight and it was cool. Like I got like really really lean. I wish I hadn't used parts of my youth for cutting, just with hormones and all that stuff. I think you should be growing as a young man, but I didn't want to be chubby anymore, so I changed that.
Sure.
But the problem is when you start to realize like, okay, I can just pull this lever, eat less food, and get leaner and maybe more of a desirable aesthetic that I was looking for. And again, who's deciding that? Is it external? Is it internal? It gets really, really hard. And I also think that, especially within the bodybuilding community, there was like this really big push, like out of characters like Greg Doucette and honestly just a lot of like prep people for a while. There was a ton of emphasis on low calorie, high volume food. So just like fill your stomach up so much that you can't eat anymore with things that like cabbage or something like lettuce that literally is just filling the stomach. And for a while I ate like that. It was like huge stir fries of like cauliflower rice and broccoli and like lean chicken or egg whites, like totally void of pretty much nutrition other than the macronutrient itself. And it made me feel horrible. Like I had digestive issues and all these things. But because I was in a deficit for these extended periods of time, and I started to look at foods and label them in my head, good food, bad food, can't have that, can have that. It's kind of like anything in life when you're told that you can't have it, and especially when it comes from in here, you want it more.
Yeah.
And so I ended up developing a pretty like significant like binge purge kind of cycle. And it was all, I've never talked about it to anyone or in a public sphere. Like I've wanted to tell this story for a while. I've only recently come into the acceptance personally to be able to externalize it. But like even up and through university, like I'm living in a fraternity house around a bunch of other guys. Like I'm the guy who's meal prepping. I'm the guy who's cooking out of his room rather than eating the house food. But like when people would go to bed, like I would go sneak food out of the kitchen, or like we had cereal bar and I would just go crush an entire box or go out to the gas station and get a full case of cookies or something like that and just like engorge myself and then punish myself with purging. And that lasted for a while. And the only thing that brought me out of that like dark place other than the awareness, because that's the wildest part, is like the whole time I'm like, this is toxic, this is unhealthy mentally, physically, all of that. And I was like watching myself do it, but I couldn't stop myself. The only thing that brought me out was like recharacterizing my relationship with food by choosing satiety and quality of food and saying like what is going to serve my body and my purpose and actually make me feel good. Like stop worrying about restriction in any direction, bulk, cut, any of that, and just choose the ingredients that are single ingredient foods that like fill your true satiety signals. And for those that don't know the word, like satiety just is the signal in your body that I am full. And there's a number of ways that your body determines that. One is just, is my stomach full of things? And that's the game I played for a long time. You feel like shit, you're super gassy, you're super bloated. But there's more to that. It's your body and brain getting the actual nutrition it needs to say like, oh, okay, we're cool. Like I can think clearly. And that comes from things that are demonized in the bodybuilding community, like fats, for instance. Like I was eating just strict egg whites for years, but the yolk, that's magical nectar right
and
there.
there's flavor, baby.
Yeah, exactly. And there's flavor, there's texture, and you're missing out on all these things that tell your brain, like, okay, I'm safe, I'm nourished, and I don't need to eat again. So that's been the journey of the last probably 2 or so years, kind of coming out of that. And there would still be kind of, I guess, relapses, like if you want to use that word. But choosing satiety and nutritionally dense foods, and then always observing whether or not the decision I was going to make with food was out of like my highest self, or is this just something that I'm trying to mask right now? And so just creating that little bit of separation. Stimulus is go eat a case of cookies.
Yeah.
Just give yourself 90 seconds before you grab it off the shelf or go downstairs and grab whatever. Why do you want that right now? Do you just need a glass of water? Do you just need a little bit of salt? Do you just need to stand up and move your body because you've been sitting down for too long? Creating just a little bit of gap allowed me to kind of step away from making those impulsive decisions. And now I wouldn't think twice about those types of like truly engorging myself. And I can also now look at a dessert at a restaurant. Like if I'm out and it's like a fancy restaurant and I really want it, I'll get it.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to play that dialogue in my head of like, that's bad, can't have that, so that I don't get it at the restaurant, then I go home and then go to the gas station and grab some bullshit just to fill that need that I wanted to fill in the first place.
And it's emotional as well.
Totally emotional.
Yeah, for sure. Did you have any coaches or anyone that was kind of like guiding you or giving you advice during this time?
No, not at all. And I look across my life. Somebody asked me something similar the other day. Like, I think somebody DM'd me on Instagram and they said, like, did you have, a mentor that was further down the road in whatever it was? I think it was online business specifically, when you were going along. And the truth is no. Like, so much of who I've become now, I think, was trying to be the role model I wish I always had. Just because, like I said, with my dad, like, love him to death, but when you don't have the time spent with someone, there is no relationship, just like time spent with self. And across my first 18 years, like if it was an hour a day, like not that much time spent. And it was something that, again, like I wanted that so badly. And I feel tremendously blessed to say that I feel like I was given a lot personally to be able to become somebody that's like worthy of leading and helping others. And it's why I choose to do others focused work now. But yeah, it was a very much like, okay, you don't have that person, become that person.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy. And I do think that especially as I take these kind of next stair steps in life towards really large goals, I will seek out mentorship constantly, because I think that is how you take quantum leaps. Like the only way I dove into the online world was I had to take a loan from my younger brother to buy a course in Mastermind online, but that changed my life forever. It was money I didn't have, but I made the act of faith. Like if you've been stuck in a repetitive route with health and fitness and the YouTube videos aren't cutting it and the free information out there that's not cutting it, what's $500 a month or $600 a month to change the trajectory of your health and life, right? Like I will die on that hill, like investing in yourself, because I've seen the reward in my life. And it helped me get over like limiting beliefs with money and all these things. So yeah, I think seeking out mentorship is massive. And had I had the awareness earlier, I would have.
Yeah, I've spent a disgusting amount of money on mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the perfect thing too.
Dude, I wouldn't spend my money on anything else. Like when I went into the online coaching world, I went from personal training for 10 years to COVID happening. Now I need to do marketing, invoicing, sales, how to build a system that actually builds rapport with clients and gets feedback from them and tracks everything. I had no idea what I was doing. I had absolutely no idea. I had a coach. That's the first guy that popped up on my Instagram. I was like, he looks like a nice guy. Let me give him some money. And changed my life completely. Like really, I was involved in a really great mentorship program for a good year. And then when I wanted to level up when it came to my health and fitness and do an Ironman, I got someone to help me with that as well, because I can scroll on YouTube and I can download free plans. And, this is what I say to any clients that essentially want to come on board with me. I'm not reinventing a wheel here. I'm not reinventing a calorie deficit, maintenance, surplus, high protein, low carb. I'm not reinventing any of that. That you can find in a Men's Health. When it comes to training, I'm not reinventing anything body recomposition wise. A chest press is a chest press, you know what I mean? Progressive overload is progressive overload. But, if you come to me and say, Damien, I want you to help me with doing an Ironman, I don't know shit. Like, I've never done that. That's not my experience is bodybuilding. So that's what I know. I would rather tell someone, sorry, I actually can't help you, and put you in touch with someone that can. So mentorship's extremely important. I think also on an emotional level, having someone that can act as a soundboard for you, and as you say, hold that space. If you're struggling with training and nutrition, are you really struggling with training and nutrition, or do we actually need to look at like the other pillars and cornerstones of your life and things like your support structure, right? How much time are you really working versus giving back to yourself? Is there a routine that is conducive to us actually getting anywhere with this? Because when it comes to training and nutrition, it's a very black and white thing. Like, at least on paper, it's a very black and white thing. But when you have to go home after a long day of work and you need to be a provider to your kids, or you need to also give time to your loved one and your partner, at the same time you've maybe got family, and maybe family are ill, and like you have to spread yourself out over so many different roles. But can you really hold yourself to a high standard for them when you don't hold yourself to a high standard for yourself even? And I think that was where having a coach and having a mentor to oversee everything that I was doing and say, this is actually where we need to pull back. And I think this is where you need to push forward a little bit. It's not about getting it right. It's not about, getting 5 sessions in the gym every single week and making sure that all your food 3 times a day for 7 days in a week is prepped in advance. But are there pockets of opportunity, and, where can we essentially optimize this process to get you into better health, in the long run? And that's where having a coach, for me at least, was really, really helpful. And this is essentially why I try and now do what I do, and what we try and do with people is to, optimize their lifestyles and look for pockets of opportunity. Instead of course, we want it to be a complete 180 and be a complete lifestyle change, but that doesn't happen overnight. We need to look at like kind of the smaller things, in between, in between, their daily structures and habits, and where can we just do, I think, a little bit better, which is important.
Totally agree. And the dialogue is so massive. And I think I've noticed in men, there's a general hesitancy because there's so much pressure to provide and protect and just go figure it out. And I don't like to play like the society card. Like, it's whatever. I think it's been timeless. I think it's a modern problem as well as it's an old one. But yeah, there's always been a great expectation on men. It's because we are capable of a lot. So it's okay that the standard is high. However, you need to also look at yourself empathetically, and having groups of accountability, group calls or one-on-one, some other person to just be a mirror to you and let you speak. It's just like a journal, but with live feedback. So it's like amplified and maybe the most effective tool out there, because you get to say like, okay, this is where the week went wrong. I missed on this. Could have been better here, but I was really strong here. And when you just kind of recount those types of things, or even just how you were feeling throughout the week, somebody else can just be a piece of glass and say like, objectively, this is what I'm hearing from you. Not subjectively what you're telling yourself about what happened, but objectively, I'm hearing that, when you're consistently talking to so-and-so, you fall off. When you're consistently taking long days at work, those are the days where we miss on meals or we miss on training. Or the weeks where we don't journal, those are the weeks where we have kind of lower mental health weeks. I'm observing correlation here, not the internal dialogue of it's actually this reason, and the so-and-so talked to me, and the blah, blah, blah. Because like, there's so much going on in here. And if you just sit there and like, I got no skin in the game other than to help you, whoever the person is sitting across from me, whether it's a friend or a client or like the group call, and just showing that light, like being that piece of glass, being that mirror, there is literal magic in that.
And when you hold space for someone and you just let them talk and talk and talk and talk, they answer their own questions.
Yep.
So the thing is, sometimes, I would get onto a call with my coach and I would just babble. Like, we would have a 1 hour call and I would speak for about 59 minutes of that, But that 1 minute where he would just say, and how does that make you feel? I'm like, whoa, bro, what did you just say? Like, wow, that was insane, you know? But like, it was actually just that self-realization. I needed someone to mirror everything that I was actually just, you know, kind of getting off and just being like, okay, I've just factually given you an idea of what my entire week looked like and why I was so low, or but I didn't stop to think how I felt about any of it until you just asked me how it made me feel. You know, and it's just even just those small questions, because if I listen to you to just respond with more facts, right? Like you telling me about, you know, the troubles that you're having with with sticking to your plan. These are the exercises that are going wrong, and you're really stressed out, and there's just so much going on there, which is why you're not on track and you're not getting results. And now I complicate your situation with even more facts. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what we need to do, and this is what we need to do. Actually, sometimes the answer is just so simple that you will never find that answer if you just don't hold space for someone, because generally they know the answer. You know that the training plan is going to work if you show up for it. You know that the meal plan that I've given you will work if you just take the time to prep. So we don't need to spend so much time on that. It's more, why can we not do that? Like, what are the reasons that like we're struggling to actually just meet those, you know, certain metrics throughout the week? So coaching for me has completely changed my life, dude. It's been an integral part of, I think, when I recently became single last year, you know, my motivation for why I was working so hard and my purpose essentially was my ex, right? And when we split up, I all of a sudden found myself like sitting there just being like, well, fuck, now I don't have any purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the exact week that I took on a mindset coach. And he explained to me, like, dude, now you've got a clean slate. We can build on this. And had I not had someone say that to me, I would have been sitting there freaking out,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I would have maybe made poorer choices. Maybe I would have looked for more toxic forms of distraction, you know, and just to take myself away from the hurt and the pain. But actually just having someone to step in and just say, I hear you. I understand that you're feeling this way and that you're hurt and that you're struggling, but this is a clean slate. If someone didn't pose that question to me, and essentially a coach, right, having someone who is a lot more well versed in a lot of things that I'm not. That's why I went for a mindset coach, because I don't need a body composition coach. I don't need someone to get me in shape. I need someone to say, what's going on in here?
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure this out, you know? So yeah, power of coaching has really been an absolutely phenomenal thing that came into my life. And I think that's why it makes me so passionate also to help other people.
And I think like the really powerful underlying message that like needs to be drilled home is that it is not an acknowledgement, like by seeking coaching, mentorship, online courses, etc. The answers have always and will always be inside of you.
Mm.
There is nothing anyone can give you that will make you any more worthy or complete than what is inside of you. It is a technology, it is a tool for you to see that and to remember that ability. Like, I think life at large is this kind of this arc of remembering, because like on a spiritual, metaphysical, whatever, like I think we're coming back to a place to experience things and learn, but you're forgetting where you came from in the first place. But in the very practical and tactical, you know the answers. It's all within you. You know where you're failing your highest self. You know where you're really strong. You know what those gaps are, the patterns of things that tend to lead to X, Y, and Z. The coach or the program or the tool, journaling, all of it. These are technologies to bring that awareness, to remember that it was all there to start with. Like week 1 of my program is, I call it like intro to self, and each of the 12 weeks is like themed after one of the 12 apostles in the famous Leonardo da Vinci painting of the Last Supper. And the first one is Peter. And Peter holds in his hands the keys to heaven. Like that's his attribute as a saint. And so I say that like you hold the keys to heaven in your hand. It's all within your control. So don't look at buying a coach or a mentorship program or an online fitness offer or whatever it is as this like, I needed help. I didn't know. I couldn't have done it without X, Y, and Z. No. These were tools that were available to you in your environment that you used to pull it out of yourself. It was always there. So take it as an empowering decision or an empowered decision rather than one of like, I just can't. I'm going to have to reach out for help.
A move out of scarcity almost, you know.
Exactly.
That's why a lot of people invest in coaching when they don't need it, they're not ready for it. And and I find that, I have to be very careful of who I bring on board, right? There's a process of coming online. Like, this is not a free for all where, if I cannot help you, I'm going to tell you that I cannot help you, because I don't want to bring on the wrong type of client. My skill set's obviously very specific to someone, but I think, take that aside, most people don't actually need coaching. They maybe might need personal training, right? They might need a physical form of accountability and someone to be there. I think a lot of people invest in coaching thinking that it's going to save their life, right? This is the last resort. This is going to be the gold standard, like, look at these results online. But my best results have actually not come from a training and nutrition framework, but more an emotional turnaround. And, I don't know a lot or enough about the spiritual realm to, like, really implement a lot of that into what I do. But I think building a strong rapport with clients, and I think asking them thought-provoking questions and getting them to actually analyze what is the underlying behavior that's not training or nutrition related, that's where the most powerful transformations come from.
100%. And it speaks to the fact that you can't delineate or, like, silo aspects of a human being. Like, you don't have just a work mode and just a training mode and just a whatever. Like, the I behind everything, is experiencing all of it all at the same time. So, like, all of my emotional baggage, I rock up to the gym and have to get under the bench press while also dealing with X, Y, and Z in my past. And then when I leave the gym and I'm talking to maybe the next girl I go to date, or a business partner at a meeting, or whatever it may be, like, all of that's coming with me. And if I didn't show up to the gym, I brought the slightly lower version of my physical self to that emotional meeting.
Yeah.
And it's all a continuous mixed process that should always be addressed holistically,
Sure.
in my opinion. And I think the greatest coaches that are out there, the greatest programs, even if they market in a vertical of body composition, like you just said, like, the reason the transformations happen is because you're changing a whole human being. And, like, I will, like, preach and die on the hill of, like, the holistic, it's like a word, but, like, holistic self-mastery. You can't just get fit because you don't want to be a super jacked dude who's sad as shit and unfulfilled. You also don't want to be this person who's, like, fully spiritually enlightened, but couldn't lift their luggage to get in the plane, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think, like I said, when we have the ability to be so much, it calls forth the duty to do so. And I think everyone's highest self is jacked, is tan, is really present, is emotionally secure, is all of these things. And you can have it all.
Yeah. Yeah, you really can, dude. Like, and this is something that I've come under, like, a little bit of scrutiny with a few people, in the past, because, sure, you'll sit in a room with someone who's extremely successful, right? And they might have 6-figure business and, like, they're absolutely killing it, but their health is, like, at an all-time low. And you know what, like, they can sit there and say, I am actually really happy with myself, and, like, things are going well. I don't need to look good to feel good. But there are elements of health and fitness that can only be provided through health and fitness. And if you are not training routinely, you're not getting good blood flow, you're not oxygenating the body, you are not moving, you're becoming a lot more concrete. This is not good for, anatomically at least, and physiologically, this is not good for the body. So while you're convincing yourself that everything is going great, I know that when someone says that to me, that when they go home and they're sitting there alone, maybe looking in the mirror, or not even aesthetically looking at themselves, but maybe just sitting there a little bit slunched over and feeling a little bit low during the day, not energized, you cannot tell me that you are operating from your highest self if health and fitness is not a part of your daily routine. Does it need to be, exactly what you would reference from a Men's Health magazine? No, not at all. Does it need to be the exact diet that a men's physique competitor would have? Definitely shouldn't be. Actually, like, I think the years that I did bodybuilding were my most unhealthy years, lacking all the nutrients. It's just chicken, broccoli, and fucking rice. That was it. Where were the nutrients, right? So even though I was like super jacked on all these supplements and like, energized, actually there would be days where I'm just like, fuck, dude, like I'm tired, man. Like there's nothing in the tank. So I know that, even though I had more structure and routine doing that than what some people that are purely focusing on business are doing, you cannot tell me that you are feeling fucking great when like you are not incorporating, health and fitness. And so that's why I agree with you in saying that like you can be all these things and you should be all these things if you want to keep on leveling up. What would you say is the correlation of what you've maybe identified with the people that you work with, or with yourself, with improving your health, and that indirectly and directly impacting positively your business?
Yeah, I mean it is 100% direct because I don't get to leave this body to go work on my online business. Like, if I could plug into some sort of supercomputer, get an extra bit of RAM, like go for 12 hours a day, not sleep, I'd sign up. Maybe I wouldn't. I'm anti-chip for the record.
Yeah, me too.
But I think that like it is a complete amplifier. And as I kind of alluded to at the beginning, and like with the Vitruvian identities, like it's the center, and it can be imagined as the base of that pyramid. Like if there starts to be cracks in the foundation, like it doesn't matter how high in the sky we get these great like spiritual awakenings and philosophical ideas, or we build a 7-figure business or whatever. Like the sick man, or the healthy man wants 1,000 things, the sick man wants one. He just wants to be healthy again. Like that take yourself back to the last time you were sick. I'm like blessed, grateful, knock on wood, to say that I haven't been sick in a long time, like truly ill. But I definitely was growing up, right? Like you're bedridden with the flu, whatever. You're just lying there aching, shivering, sweating, sneezing, coughing, blah. The only thing you want is to just feel better. Yeah. You're not thinking about what so-and-so said, or who didn't text you back, or like whether the client's going to sign back again or whatever. Like you're just in physical pain. So the flip side of that is that, okay, we get above baseline, we're well. What does vitality feel like? What does it mean to show up as a business owner where every single day I wake up at 5 a.m. or whatever time I elect to, and I'm immediately clear head, thinking well, no brain fog, energy from then to the time I choose to go to bed, no dips and spikes. Yeah. I just think a lot of people haven't experienced that. But when you get to that place, like you eat a meal, no gas and bloating and indigestion, your skin is clear, you can be in the sun all day, you're super switched on in every conversation you have. You don't have these kind of like lulls. You don't have to hit the 3 p.m. coffee or the 3 p.m. wall. That person that I'm describing, like that physical vehicle, you cannot tell me that guy is not going to smoke the next dude who's like hitting Red Bulls all throughout the day just to keep scaling his online business. Because that guy crashes eventually. Maybe he can do a month of like monk mode, lock himself in a blue light box, and like really do well in online business, for sure. But at some point, the chicken comes to roost with the physical body, and then you're the sick guy in the bed that only wants to get healthy. Yeah. And the other guy gets to keep running his race. Yeah. It's not a sprinter's pace, but he's moving, and he's moving well. So for me, it's like a total pillar, and it's also like acts of self-love and it like a recharge action, where a lot of people, I think they tend to categorize it as like, I have to find time for these things. But when you make the time for them, it allows you to be better and more effective in those work windows. Sure. So it's less of like, I need 8 hours to kind of fuck around and half work. I need 4 hours of elite focus, which opens up these other things. Sure. So yeah, it's a fundamental pillar, and I see like the change in the guys that I work with like drastically, and I've seen it for myself, and it's been long enough on this road that like I can't imagine a life where it's not at the center. Yeah.
It also positively affects the people around you, not just in a work environment, but like, some of my best transformations or at least what I deem as the best transformation. So not aesthetically, but like, what impact did I make on this person's life? I've got a client who he just changed things up completely. He got into such good shape, great routine, great structure. He was prepping all the food. His family were eating very differently to him. But then the bug bit. His wife got on board. She lost a bit of weight. At the same time, that improved her confidence to then go into the gym, to start actually, moving a little bit more. Through that, she enjoyed movement so much that she went back to her old job of being a physiotherapist, right? And had he not taken that step to improve his life, improve his health, she would never have been on the receiving end of that, you know. And so now there's 2 units in that household that are both working towards, you know, a longer life together. So we're not even looking at like, okay, well, now I'm just eating healthy or now I'm just training. It's we've got more years to enjoy each other's company. And when I heard that, I was just like, holy fuck, are you kidding me right now? Like, how epic is that? So we had a photo shoot in the UK, and I'd prepped him for this photo shoot. I flew over to London, and he walked in, and then his wife walked in behind him. And she was standing there. We were all standing behind the camera, just watching him, like, you know, have these really just proud moments. And I just looked at her, and she was just standing there crying her eyes out at how proud she was of him. And I was like, this is impact. You know, there's no point in getting in good shape if it is not inspiring the people around you, if it's not improving the lives of not just you, but the people around you. Because if you get into great shape and then you still go and stand there and you feel shit, you're unhappy, you feel like, and it's very common, right? Like I, for example, trained for the Ironman. I did the Ironman, I was just not fucking fulfilled at all. But what built that character and what I did enjoy was all the training leading up to that, right? So now that I've actually done the event, I'm like, you know what, there's more out there. But let's say if you're putting in all this hard work and you're just still inherently unhappy with yourself, yeah, you need to look a little bit, you know, on a deeper level here and actually kind of like, yeah, maybe even step away from that and focus on something else. And I think that's where things such as like spiritual work and, you know, self-development work, once you can actually take a few steps back, have that clean slate, and you can start putting new building blocks on, that actually might really propel you into a much better, I think, environment when it comes to your training and your health and your fitness. But if we're constantly, I think, chasing this external image all the time, you just set yourself up for disappointment at the end of the road.
I agree, and the Iron Man thing, as well as kind of the what you described with the photo shoot, makes me think of like the concept. It's from game theory, like infinite and finite games, and a huge recharacterization. It took me a while to kind of realize it because I was wrapped up a bit in the bodybuilding, and even as an athlete, you know, you have seasons, you have on and off season. So we tend to put fitness and health into these buckets, right? Like I'm cutting, I'm bulking, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to, or I've fallen out of shape, so let me do an X week course.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when we provide online products or services, they're fixed in time. That's okay. But I encourage everyone to like completely shift in their head. Like, what would health and fitness look like in your life if I was playing this game to the day I die?
Yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is that you are. So you're playing an infinite game. As long as you and the current avatar are riding together, that's what your health and fitness journey looks like. So while you're young, you can ride that vehicle hard as fuck. You can run Ironmans, you can do jujitsu, you can do whatever you want, right? Like especially as a man, like we're resilient beings. But the 60-year-old version of you, maybe their health and fitness looks like long walks. Maybe he's still surfing. Maybe he gets out for golf once a week. Maybe whatever, right? But he's still very well because of the bricks laid across an entire lifetime of conscious eating and living and walking and vitality, grounding, being in the sun, fresh air, like these pillars of health, that it doesn't have to be caught up in these tight cycles that really are just self-abusive for the vanity metrics. And even like the popular zeitgeist right now is pretty bodybuilding centric. Like Chris Bumstead, like the face of bodybuilding right now, is closing in on like 20 million followers. Like he's bigger than NBA
Major
players.
influence.
Massive influence. I love that he's an extremely high character individual.
Yeah.
That's a super redeeming factor. But I do think that especially like the younger people we see with like the TikTok generation, like, and the more open dialogue we see now with like performance enhancing drugs for bodybuilding, people, in my opinion, are missing the mark. Like it's lost on them the infinite game of health. Chris actually does a really good job talking about the balance and where he sees that like I'm making sacrifices for my health to achieve these goals currently, but at whenever 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, when he hangs up the cleats, it's back to like holistic health. And like I think it's gonna be really cool to see a guy like him with his head on, what he looks like physically and just generally as like a business owner, father, leader, etc., when he goes into that kind of that more holistic space. Because I think that he can then bang on the drum of like, okay, I took my body to the pinnacle. I created the marble sculpture. But then when we we dial back on the pharmacology and the crazy dieting and all that stuff, this is what you can kind of get to. And when he is able to sit on camera and say like, all right, remember that vlog and remember what I'm saying now, like I feel way better now.
Yeah.
This is what you guys should be aiming for.
Sure.
It's cool to look at the guy on the stage, but this Chris is like my highest version.
Happy Chris. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, the steroids are another...
It's a dangerous game.
Dude, I think what blows my mind with the steroids though is that like it's such an open culture with it. Like everyone is just happy to like just tell you what they're on. And I'm like, you shouldn't be on any of this shit. Like this is bad for you, you know. But I mean, then again, I come from that background. That's, you know, that's something that I did for a very long time. But looking back at it now, would I have done it? Probably. Like, you know, I think because I needed to go through that phase of character, actually. Like, I needed to actually really put myself in a... And, dude, steroids put you in a fucking dark place, bro. Like, I'll be very honest, dude. Like, the unhappiest that I've been, and I don't want to say borderline abusive, but, like, acting out a character, definitely me not being who I inherently was, or... you know, who my family had raised me to be, or like how my mom had, you know, raised me to be. It's all of a sudden be taking these things that were just like making me go fucking crazy if someone said something stupid even, or what I perceived as being stupid, but maybe they were just looking out for me. You know, like the steroid game is seriously, it's I think it's a little bit nuts when you go on Instagram and it's just all over the place.
Yeah.
And how it's so freely available as well. So I think that's why I really appreciate someone like Chris Bumstead's honesty about it, because I think when you engage with someone who has such an influence over people, if it comes from an authentic place and like an open and honest place, that's the best way that it can kind of be put through to 20 million people. Like that's ridiculous.
It's crazy the scale. And I'm glad we are now in a place where the dialogue is open, so that people, even from a young age, can understand that certain things are not possible, naturally achievable without exogenous means. So people can at least be like, okay, I'm starting to see what a natural physique is going to look like, and I'm starting to see what an unnatural physique looks like. The bad side of that is that, you know, really impressionable like young men may just they can't see the infinite game. They can't. It's really hard as a 16-year-old to think about your 45-year-old self. So you're just like, dude, fuck it. I want to be super jacked at 18.
I've had this problem with clients.
It's a shorter route. Not to take the work out of it or any of that stuff. But I think the open dialogue with the right nuanced conversation will hopefully lead people to understand kind of the pros and cons of that kind of decision. And potentially the lifetime commitment, right? Because you potentially are messing with your endocrine system in ways that are somewhat irreparable and may require facilitation for the rest of your life, whether it's TRT or whatever. So I don't know. I love, like I said, Chris is like a great emblem. I aspire to like have him on my podcast and meet him one day and congratulate him for that work, that side of it, right? Like enough people are giving him pats on the back for the gym thing, but it's the man underneath the fucking armored suit that like is really, really special about Chris. And I like that he is the head of that sport in that world right now. And it's also cool to see people like yourself providing the nuanced take. I mean, it's dropping today, like my conversation with George Armstrong, like he talked about it as well. That dark side of steroids, like somebody who already had that like volatile personality type, like in his case, he said it was like an amplifier. It put him in a very scary place. Mix in other illicit substances as well, and it's just dangerous. You're jacked, super strong, and pumped up on all kinds of substances. Like you're a weapon. Like you're an endangerment to yourself and others. So it's awesome that characters like him, like yourself, like Chris, can speak to that effect and be like, hey, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I got cool pictures out of it, but like it was a scary time.
I think once you acknowledge, like people acknowledge and know when they're taking steroids, it's a substance. It's foreign. It's not something that you can just go and get from like your local grocery store. Like, you know that what you're taking is illegal. You know that like it's not culturally acceptable. And so what that also, I think, like under surface level does is also then open the door for you to go and do other illicit things. So this was when, the second that I started taking steroids, it was, oh, what's a line of Coke? Let's go and have a big night out. I'm jacked. I look good. It's summer. You know what? Let's go and have a few drinks and let's go and do like a bag or two. So it becomes a concoction of seriously life-threatening things. And I think that's what I can look back and tell people, don't go do that. If, let's say, you are testosterone deficient or your natural levels of growth hormone are declining, I'm the first person to say, go get that tested, do the blood work, have a good doctor, and get on something, for sure. But where steroids get a bad rep is because they're not regulated. You're taking 3 times as much as what a hormonal replacement therapy would be. Example, 1 ml a month or 1 ml every 2 weeks. And here you are taking fucking 2 mls on a Monday, 2 mls on a Wednesday, 2 mls on a Friday. In between that, you're now popping 3 pills every single morning of X, Y, and Z. You need to lean out. You need to drop water. You need to fill up. The second that you've opened the door for one illicit substance, all of a sudden everything else is kind of like, oh, okay, well, it's fine. I'm already doing one bad thing. So like, let me just do it all together. And I think that's where I try and draw the line, especially when like someone who's between the ages of 21 to 25 comes on board, generally male. And they'll say, oh, well, Damien, what do you think about me maybe taking some Anavar or me taking a little bit of Clen? And I'm like, take whatever the fuck you want, but it's not about the actual substance itself here. It's about the mindset of the second you open the door for one thing, when are you planning to actually close it, right? Like, at what point are you going to have that self-realization moment that this is not good for your health, it's not good for your mentality, it's not good for the people around you that you're probably going to treat like shit because you don't know how to regulate this new hormonal change. And for me, the changing moment was I had a fight with my girlfriend, and it was the first time that I got so angered that I wanted to hit someone. And hit someone, not even hit a woman, hit someone. It was not in my nature to ever want to fight with anybody. And all of a sudden, you've brought this unbelievable sense of like, when you get so hot, you get cold. Where you're like, don't say another word because I'm going to fuck out right now. And it was the second that like I felt that, I was like, whoa, dude, no. This is like, you need to walk away from the situation right now. And as I walked out, I was like, that's it. The shit stops today. That's it. Like today, game is over. And like, that was it. Like I literally, the second I walked away from that situation, that was the last time that like I ever wanted to associate myself with like that character that had been built up. Yeah. And I think that's also another thing when you're on gear, how people perceive you and how people validate you and how people clap for you when you're on stage, you think that your behavior is right. It's the same as going out with a whole bunch of people that love doing drugs. You're all doing it, so your behavior is being validated. So, for a 4 or 5 year period where all of my poor behavior choices were being validated by others, for me to have that moment of, holy fuck, no, I've actually been doing all of this completely wrong. This is not a way of living. That's why I don't want someone to open up the door with just a small tab of Anavar or Clen.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's also just like flatly impractical. Like, what are you really going to be the dude who's popping out of the button up at like his 9 to 5? Yeah. Like, if you're not pursuing,
sweating,
just breathing heavy in the hallway. Yeah. I think it's, to me, there's just like such a malalignment. Like, if you are not pursuing the very tight window of like that specific goal to step on stage and do this thing, and it's the only way you can compete. It blows my mind. I mean, there's clearly a lot of money in it, becoming an influencer, all these things, but yeah, just keeping a little bit of that long-term perspective. Like, where does this take me in 3 years? Where does this take me in 5 years, 10 years? Like, am I going to be ripping like 500 meg of test as a dad?
Yeah.
Like, where are we going with this? Where does this take me? So yeah, just a little bit of that long-term perspective. And trust me, I know it's hard. Like, especially somebody who has had to overcome a lot of like epigenetic barriers. Like, I don't like to like bang the drum of genetics. I think we have a ton of control. But like what you see now is not where I came from.
Yeah.
And so it's been hard. Like, it's taken a long time to like build up the body I have. Still have goals, still moving towards them. But like, every once in a while you're just like, fuck, like the meme goes around the
Yeah.
internet, like, fuck it, trend.
Yeah.
So of course, like in my mind, I'm like, I'd love a shortcut to X, Y, and Z result, especially when I'm training so optimally. But knowing that it doesn't serve the 35-year-old version of me, the 45-year-old version, like it's no contest, it's no question.
Dude, I ask myself regularly, honestly, and this is something I need to obviously evidently work through, is like, just go on a little bit of GH. You know, there are parts of me that, like, sometimes I'm like, you know what, dude, like, you're training really hard, you're getting the most out of your nutrition. Imagine if you added just a fucking tiny bit of test to this, how insane you would look. And then I'm like, why?
Right.
Like, what for? Like, what do you, it goes back to the question of what do you have to prove and who do you need to prove it to, right? Like, yeah, people will say you look insane, but like you've been told that for the past 10 years already.
Right.
So like, what extra is that going to bring into your life? At the same time, when you're now sitting there at home in front of the mirror with a fucking needle in your ass by yourself, like, aren't you going to feel like a little bit of a loser? You know, like, so then I'm like, okay, no, notes the test, notes the GH, save it for when you're 45. You know, so I'm just saving it until I'm 45 when I need it, when I do blood work, and when like it's actually going to improve the quality and longevity of my life. At the same time, I might get to 45 and be like, why?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, what's the actual purpose? Is this maybe the younger self, the person that's still seeking the validation, the person who maybe still doesn't feel good enough? Is putting a needle in you really going to fix that? Like, what do you need to do a little bit more of the internal work? And I think since coming to Bali especially, bro, like I've been doing a lot of breath work. I've been really taking a lot of time in the mornings to just walk on the beach, be by myself, be present, not wake up, sit on my phone, or like aimlessly scroll for hours before I go to sleep. Like really just setting boundaries for myself. And I feel like that has given me the space to, I think, delve a little bit deeper into a lot of these, like, kind of these like little triggers almost, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think, just even speaking to your personal story, it's like if you look back on the last 6 months, like how much have you grown and changed? I have full confidence just on this conversation that the 45-year-old Damien won't be making X, Y, and Z health decision out of lack, right? Like if you continue these types of practices monthly, daily, weekly, yearly for the next decade, like that's going to be a fundamentally changed man. He'll be present with his children. He'll be present with his partner. And there will be no insecurity because your mission will be changed. Your outer purpose will be shifting and evolving. But like you will have grown so much through that process that, you know, you'll have shed the layers of like the vanity and stuff. And I do think that like sans trauma and all these things that are like buzzwords around like the spiritual community in Bali, like every young man wants to feel powerful and strong. It's been a thing forever since before we knew about inner child wounds. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to exact the greatness you can from your physique and like being proud of that. So yeah, it's not like a self-flagellation or anything. It's just don't take it to the point where it's harming you. And,
Don't listen to the monkey too much.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes like there'll be like this little thought, and I'm like, okay, monkey, stop talking to me like that. You know, like, oh, just go on a little bit of test. Just go on a little bit of GH. And I'm like, monkey, I'm not listening to you right now. You know, and then I've got this like other monkey on the shoulder who's like, yeah, don't listen to him. Like, that's a bad idea. That's a fucking terrible idea. You know, and I'm like, yeah, but is it a really good idea? Like, you know, sometimes you just have this internal dialogue that, you know, sometimes you need to, I think, you've probably read The Power of Now, I'm assuming, you know, and I'm kind of getting through that right now. Lol. And I read this morning, if you're just really focusing on being in the present, right? And this obviously is part conversation of like stress and anxiety and worrying about the future and the past, etc. But, you know, just kind of focusing on literally this moment in time, is what you're doing serving you, right? And like, yeah, would that serve me? Would actually like listening to this little monkey on the shoulder, would that really actually be kind of like the best decision to make for right now? I think the second you just kind of ground yourself and pull yourself back to like the very present, it makes decision making a lot easier.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm extremely bullish on it. The Power of Now is an excellent read. It's not an easy one, I would say. But
I find it very difficult to get into in the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree. But it's really, really powerful framework. It's also stuff that people just don't think about. And it's very hard to like put into words. But Eckhart Tolle's work is really, really powerful. I think an easier way to maybe start your way in is potentially some speeches or some talks or some podcasts he's done, because he's put a ton of content in the world. But yeah, the present moment, it dissolves away all the issues, because there is no more trauma, because it's gone. The things that happened in the past simply do not exist anymore. They are history, and the things in the future are a mystery, right? They're not guaranteed. We may not even get to that quote unquote future state. Like memento mori is like a big thing for me. It's tattooed on my arm. It's the outro of my podcast. Like, remember that you're mortal. Your time is not only in a fixed window, but we don't know when it ends. Like my time could be cut short today or tomorrow. God willing, I'm a young man. I've got time left, but that's not a guarantee. So getting extremely clear on like what I can do today, but specifically right now. Like the only thing I can do, the only thing that exists, period, is this conversation, you and me, this room, that camera. We're doing it. Like, this is it. This is all of life and reality as we know it right here.
It's crazy.
So you just have to be like dissolve into the present. Like, hold space when you're speaking, respond as articulately as I can when I'm sharing, and just focus here. I don't need to think about all the things I'm going to be doing after this, all the things I did this morning, what went well, what went wrong. Like, it's gone. This is it.
It doesn't exist.
It does not exist. Yeah.
It's actually insane.
It's crazy. And it gets like really woo pretty quickly. I love to like play in those kind of mind spaces, but yeah, in like a very pragmatic sense, just stay where you are, where your 2 feet are. Like, what is the best thing that you can do in that moment? You're sitting at home, maybe you're at work listening to this podcast, maybe you're driving. Like, how can you be the highest version of yourself right now? When you get home to cook your meal, what is the best thing you can do for yourself in that moment? When you're at the gym, be at the gym. When you're with your partner, be with your partner. When you're reading, read. When you're on your phone, be on your phone.
Yeah.
It's like this like disparate trying to do everything at once thing that like leads to all that anxiety. But yeah.
There's a very small part of the chapter I read a few days ago, and it was if you had a world with no humans on it, but you still had all the trees, you had the ocean, you had everything as you know it, but just no humans, and you had to say to one of the plants, what's the time? The plant's going to say, time is now, right? They're not worried about the past and not worried about the future because it doesn't exist. We've created that. Humans have created this concept of time, the past and the present and the future. And, you know, all you can really control is this exact second. I can't control what's going to happen in 15 minutes when we're done. I can't control what happened already this morning. It's already happened. I find it such an incredible concept, dude.
Yeah, and it's one of those that, like, you hear it and you're like, yeah, well, of course. But no one acts with that, of course, understanding. It's kind of like another one that comes to mind is like the How to Win Friends and Influence People. Those types of behaviors, you're not going to read that book and be like, wow, something that completely blew my mind, or I didn't know that people love to feel seen and heard and hear their name and all these things. But at the same time, the reason those principles work is because no one's doing them.
Yeah.
And same thing with Power of Now. Like, it may not be groundbreaking for you to be like, yeah, the past is behind me and yes, the future is whatever. But like, how many times during the day do you feel anxious about the meeting that's coming up or the date that you're going to go on or X, Y, and Z thing? We all fall into that. We get drawn magnetically away from the present moment because of our environment, because of this temporal being. But it is a discipline. It is a choice and an active pursuit to return.
Work.
It is work. Just like breath work. Like, you're not just floating. It's work. You are working to get the result that you want. And being in the present moment is a conscious reminder. It doesn't have to feel like hard. I don't like to like characterize that way, but it is something that it's a constant reminder. So like having mementos, having your phone wallpaper, having like setting things in place to bring you back. Gratitude, super grounding. Long conversations without the advent of any sort of distraction or phone or whatever. Those types of things bring you to the present moment. Sports, like, you can't be anywhere else except in the game. Surfing, you got to stay on the board. Like running, biking, like, you're in the moment. Like, it's really hard to think about the P&L sheet when you're sitting under 405 pounds of a squat, right? Like, choose things that bring you to the present moment and snap you there.
Sure.
And then try to take that energy in that moment with you for the rest of the day.
We're talking about books. What's the most impactful book you've read?
It's a big one. Gosh. I think this is the answer I give to people because I think it helps a lot, and it's one of the few books I return to often. So I read it 4 times a year. It's The 4 Agreements.
Okay.
And I like it because I have found very few other, if any other, books that are so concise but also still so powerful. Similar to the How to Win Friends and Influence People idea. I don't know that you read that book and walk away immediately with like, wow, I never thought of this idea, or it taught me something wildly new. But it's where we started this conversation today. The answers are within you. You just need to continue to remember them over and over, day after day after day. Like, and I've written the 4 agreements from that book into like my daily like affirmations that I have dictated to me, so that it's just hammered into my brain. But the 4 things in that book are super, super practical. And I think if you live by them, your life will drastically improve. And they are simple, but they're not easy, just like fitness.
Yeah.
Simple plan, hard to execute on it consistently. So that's one that will be my answer. I read a lot. I love to read. So like there's so many that are like coming to mind. I have to give a shout out to the Bible. It seems to be like very significant, and I'm still working my way through it right now. So that's going to be in there.
Shout out.
But yeah, shout out Jesus, shout out the Bible.
Thanks, Jesus.
I do not particularly affiliate with any religion right now, but that book still specifically just really transcendent and powerful. And then there's a bunch other. DM me on Instagram if you want a book reading list.
Yeah, dude, I'm always keen for a good
Yeah,
read.
I can send you a long little list.
Yeah, for sure, dude. One of the things, just, we've just recently kind of gone over like health and fitness and training. Something that I ask everyone that comes onto the podcast is, what does peak athletic performance look like to you?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think to me, I'll state it simply and use words that I've used in this podcast to make it nice and poetic, but it's when you say yes to opportunities and your body says yes back. I think that the athlete can play, period. You want to play basketball? Yes. And my body says yes back. You want to go play paddleball? You want to do a 15-mile hike tomorrow and like be able to keep up with no previous training? So I like that kind of idea, like train for life, be resilient and adaptable. I think someone who is athletic is the kid that we always looked at in school, and it's like, fuck, that kid's good at every sport. Yeah. Like, so something about that. I really like that idea that the athlete is, and peak athletic performance is saying yes and your body saying yes back.
Yeah. Dude, thank you so much for your time.
Of course, bro.
Really,
Thanks
really
for having me.
Appreciate it. Where can everyone that's listening to this find you? On socials, websites? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you want to follow along the content I put out, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at ZDSCHENKEN. Message me on there if you're curious about anything I've talked about, my personal story. I'm an open book, and I'm currently still the only one managing all those socials, so you're going to get me on there. You can also follow the Vitruvian Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you get your podcasts. That's my show. And I've been getting a ton of really cool guests here in Bali, so it's been a couple of really excellent episodes that are ongoing and coming out. And then I suppose if you are a man and you found any of the kind of the frameworks that I discussed today compelling, or you really just want to talk about more of my work, you can visit thevitruvian.co.com to see a little bit more about it, or just message me privately on any of my socials, and I can give you more information about that. I do have like a free Discord community, which is a great place for like-minded individuals to be all leveling up. There's a ton of free resources in there. So if you click any of the links on my website that I mentioned, it'll take you there, and you can just jump in and be part of the conversation today.
Brilliant. Guys and girls, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode, and we will see you on the next one. Ciao.